BigCountryPreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Big Country Preps Wednesday night podcast, our weekly look at the area athletic scene, what happened last week, and what's going on this week. I'm here with my partner, Dan Youngblood, via Zoom. And tonight, Dan, we've got a special guest. We got Chris Joslin, the head football coach of the Coahoma Bulldogs.
Yeah, Coach Joslin on, a guy that you and I both really like, a guy who's done a great job at Coahoma and has the Bulldogs really surprising everybody at 5-1 going into a big game against Idalou this week. So I'm excited to talk to him about the season they're off to and just what this team has been able to accomplish. So I know that they've surprised a lot of folks that didn't necessarily think they'd be in the position they're in right now. But so it's been a really fun process to work and to watch rather, and I think it'll be a fun conversation with him.
All right, before we bring on Coach Joslin, let's just take a quick look at what's going on this week. Our top ball games are the Country Preps game of the week will be Whitesboro at Brock. That's a ball game that everybody's been looking forward to for quite a while. We also have Cisco at Stanford, which is a huge matchup in District 4 2A D1. We got Comanche at Jacksboro, and that's going to be a big matchup in District 5 3A D2. We got Coahoma at Idalou, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit more detail when we bring on Coach Joslin here in a minute. And then we've got a game that's a little bit off the radar, I think. Bangs at San Saba. I think that's going to be a big ball game in Class 2A. Bangs been playing very well. San Saba, it's had its moments. San Saba's tough at home. That's going to be a ball game to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, and this week is just stacked with great games. If this were a boxing matches, this would be a stacked card, so to speak. You mentioned 4 or 5 that absolutely apply. And then you look a big game that maybe wasn't seen as quite as big at the early in the season, but Early's traveling to Brady this week for what should be a really big, good football game. And then you've got Breckenridge taking on Vernon. The way Breckenridge is playing, they look like the favorite in that district right now, but Vernon's a tough team as well, so that should be a fun matchup. And then locally, we've got 3 really important key matchups. Abilene High goes to Lubbock Cooper for a game that will be big for seeding. Wiley goes to Ryder for a game that could potentially decide that district championship. And then Cooper welcomes Paladuro, and what's a big game for them after starting off district play with a loss to Ryder last week. So just a ton of really, really good games this week throughout the area.
All right, and with that, we're going to take a quick look at what happened last week. We'll start with the locals. Dan, the Abilene High Eagles took care of business, dominated Caprock 45-0. I didn't really expect that big of a spread in that ball game, but Abilene came and they played very well offensively and defensively.
Yeah, I think this was the most complete game they've played all year long, and I think it really starts with the offense. This defense has been really very good all season long. They just had trouble offensively sometimes, taking care of the football, maintaining the football, and doing enough to score and win games. But this week, Abilene High scored on each of its first 3 possessions, led 17-0 early. The defense was just fantastic the entire time, held them under 150 total yards. But a huge win, I think, not necessarily the win itself, but the way they won. I think this was a real confidence builder for this team. And with Amarillo Tascosa in the rear view, this week's game against Cooper becomes the biggest one, but really after that, there's a lot of winnable games left on this schedule. So they've got an opportunity to kind of go into the playoffs with some momentum if they can finish strong.
All right, Wiley went in as a big favorite over Plainview, and they won big, 38-14. Nice job defensively by Wiley, holding Plainview to 42 yards rushing and about 266 yards in total offense. Nice job defensively.
Yeah, and that was a big one, too, because their defense had struggled the 3 previous games. So to come in there and play well defensively was a big one. And really, honestly, that was an interesting game because Wiley trailed 14-10 late in the first half. They had to score a touchdown to take a lead into halftime and then used a 21-point third quarter to put it away and really finally kind of asserted themselves. But this is a Wiley offense that we know at this point the Wiley offense is very, very good. The defense is kind of a work in progress, but this was a big step for them as well, just to take care of business, open district with a win, and that sets up a big game this week against Ryder. So a good win for them.
And Cooper falls on the road to Wichita Falls Ryder. That's just a great Ryder football team that they lose to 51-21 on the road.
Yeah, and it was a really tough performance, and I think it was just kind of everything coming together for Ryder because Ryder has been good all year long. Like you said, a very talented roster, very talented team, but they had really kind of struggled to pull away in several of their games before this one. This was really their first game since their opener against Wichita Falls High in a rivalry game that they really kind of took control early and blew out their opponent. But unfortunately for Cooper, things just kind of snowballed on them. They were down 41-7 at half, 48-7 early in the third, and by then, it's it's really too late to kind of get back into it. But this is one that Cooper's gonna have to bounce back from. I mean, road trips to Wichita Falls Rider are tough, and Wiley's gonna have an opportunity to learn that this week. But it's not the end. Cooper's got lots of football left to play, so we'll kind of see how they bounce back from it.
All right, Toler defeated Coleman in our Big Country Preps game of the week. That ball game was held down in Coleman. I was on hand for that one. And I got to say, Dan, Toler is a big, strong, very impressive Class 2A D1 football team. They've got perhaps the best player I've seen at that level this year. Peyton Brown, he's only a sophomore running back, 6'2", 208 pounds. The kid is a load, and he's fast enough to outrun the bigger linebackers on the field. So the only way to, if he gets out there in the second level of your defense, you got to rely on your secondary to bring him down. And then it looks like one of those old Fat Albert cartoons when he's dragging 4 or 5 much smaller players down the road. This kid is just an outstanding football player. And he gave Coleman fits that night, rushed for 140 yards, a couple of scores, and they're stout defensively as well. This was a very good football team that Coleman ran into. A couple of mistakes on Coleman's part, a couple of turnovers, and that was the difference. This is a game. I want to make this clear. This is a game that Coleman could have won had the mistakes been flipped, and the short fields were, benefiting them. But it just so happened that they made some mistakes on the short field, and Toler, capitalized on it. This is a game that Coleman could have won, but Toler is just an outstanding team. This is going to be a team that's all kinds of trouble for whoever meets them in postseason.
Yeah, and what's interesting is honestly, if you look at what Toler's done this season to a really good schedule, this was by far the closest game they played. So I mean, Coleman did some things in this game that no one had been able to do to them in terms of slowing down that offense. Unfortunately, it was just too much defensively for Coleman to overcome there. But this was a game I think we knew was going to be a really tough one for Coleman, and it was. But like you said, Coleman had chances to win, and again, if you go look at that Toler schedule, you realize that this was a very competitive game, particularly when you look at what some other teams have done against that Toler team, and good teams too. So.
All right, before we bring on Coach Joslin, we want to thank some of our sponsors. We'll start with For the Love of the Game Broadcasting and our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of K-Lakes 93.5 FM out of Breckenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and 98.5 KWBY out of Ranger. That is For the Love of the Game Broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a vehicle, new or used, give him a shout. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. Call him at 254-559-2266. That's Rob Durham up at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge. And with that, Dan, this is about time to bring on the man, Chris Joslin, whose Coahoma Bulldogs are just, they're on fire right now. 5 straight wins. After a ball game with Forsyth, they had a shot at winning, and some people think they may should have won that ball game. But anyway, they're playing really well, about as well as we've seen Coahoma play in a few years.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always exciting to talk to coaches when they're having this type of success, and just to kind of get their, pick their brains about kind of what they see as some of the keys and those sorts of things. So that's going to be a really fun conversation. And it looks like Coach Joslin's just about ready to join us. So let's go ahead and get him on.
And joining us now via Zoom, Coahoma head football coach Chris Joslin. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Bet. Thank y'all for having us. Appreciate you covering us.
All right, Coach, you're off to a great start, 5-1. Team is on a roll, coming off a big win over Littlefield. Talk about the keys to your team's success thus far. What are we looking at?
Just the off season that we had last year. I've said it every Friday night that we get interviewed. The off season these kids put in, and then the fact that I feel like at our program and where our program needs to be on the girls and boys side at Coahoma is through the track program. We had a really, really good track season last year, and that's translating over to our football season, and it also translates into the girls side of it too. Every one of our kids runs track, and I just think that's where you build some character, but also help build athletes.
Now, Coach, I speak from experience. I know that you're a guy that likes to use that media lack of respect as a motivating factor. I know that. So, and you weren't getting a whole lot of respect from much of the media. So how much of a motivating factor was it for your guys going into this season?
Oh, it was. And we talk about it all the time. I'm the type of person that I feel like that our kids need to know what's going on. We don't hide anything from them. Matter of fact, that just the other day, right before the game, one of the kids said, "Hey, coach, Big Country Preps picked you by one," and so they, they know that we talk about it. It's kind of a fun deal, but no, it's fun, and uh, you're right. No, nobody's been out here. They came out for Midnight Madness, and you guys came out to take our picture, and then other than that, nobody's been out, and over the last few weeks, people are starting to take a little bit of notice, but we're just going to worry about what we can control and go from there.
And we got it right too on that day.
There you go.
We got it right. So,
And Coach, one of the things we talked about, but before the season started, the kind of an emphasis of this team was going to be maybe having more offensive balance in terms of more getting the ball into more guys' hands, and that's something we've seen this year. Just a lot of different guys making plays for you, a lot of kids contributing. Just how good has that been to see? 'Cause I know that was a goal of yours.
Oh yes, and we've been wanting to do that since we got here, and we tell everybody that it's a process. Anytime you have a change, it's a process, and now we have been developing. As just number one thing is we've been developing quarterbacks from the 7th grade all the way through, and now that's starting to show. Billy Bailey stepped in last year as the quarterback and played really well, but he's more dynamic in getting him the ball in open space, and so. Boyd is one of those kids that we've developed as a young kid, and he stepped in and having a great year, just distributing the ball to everybody. And it makes teams, over our first 4 years here, even though we ran the ball real well with Zach and with Bryson, people were loading the box on us because we were not going to throw you out of that box very often. But now people are going to have to start playing all over the field, and feel like that was the biggest key to the Little Field game. They played a defense that we don't see. Matter of fact, the last time I coached against that defense was when I was at Rockdale in the state championship game, and we felt like we had to make big plays in the passing game, and that's kind of where that game got off to a start. Was we hit some big plays down the field against them.
And that kind of leads me into the next question. You mentioned Boyd Cox, a kid who's having a great year as a freshman. The thing I think that's probably struck me is just how good of a decision maker he's been for a guy that's playing varsity level, basically straight out of the junior high ranks. Just what have you seen from him this year, just in terms of development and just in terms of like I said, being that guy that makes plays without putting the ball in danger?
Oh yes, definitely. And probably the hardest thing in our season is starting our season off with the Howard County Bowl. I mean, it is packed, and we went into that game where he was not going to play a whole lot of snaps just because it's eye opening for a kid coming out of junior high. We've done that with Bryson. We did that with a couple of other kids, and after that game, he had been progressing through that, but after that game, he's really a coach's kid. And you talk about coaches' kids understanding the game. His dad was a head coach for a long time, and he gets the game, and he's just doing things with the ball that you would want juniors and seniors to do. And the other night he was 11 for 21, but in those 10 passes that he missed, probably 4 of them he threw out of bounds just to have to live to fight another play. And so, stuff like that. I mean, it's awesome to see a kid like that not forcing the ball and trying to get the ball out of his hands pretty quick with some of the plays that we had. But he's making really good decisions, and he's also a good runner. We're just trying not to run him very much while he's young, but before he graduates, he's going to be running the ball quite a bit.
Coach, was there a point in time during the course of this season when you realized, what, we might be pretty dang good this year? Was there a point in time that you remember when that happened, or was it before the year?
Well, in the summer, we had some football nights. Now the UIL allows us to do that. And I looked over at one of our coaches about the 4th night, and I said, "We're doing stuff now that we have not done in the whole time we've been here. Where the kids are understanding what we're doing." And I told them that night, I said, "You guys showing up and are able to do this stuff, if we can put it all together whenever we show up in August, then we have a chance to be really good." And back to the Boyd situation, I want to make this comment too. We went into the season where both quarterbacks were going to play equally. And like I said, Billy is a playmaker. He is on the field the entire time, defense, offense. We're moving him around different spots. And him and I came in here after the second ball game, and we had a meeting. And I said, "Look," I said, "you've earned the right for me to have this conversation with you. How are you feeling about the quarterback position? Do you want to play quarterback? Do you want to go back to receiver?" And he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Coach, I just want to win." And he said, "I think we're better with Boyd playing quarterback and me just playing all over the field. And so, it's a testament to him. Most kids wouldn't do that. Most kids would say, yes, I still want to play quarterback. And so that's kind of helped Boyd along in the fact that he still has a really good friend in Billy, who's 2 years older, but they hang out all the time, who's also helping him out on the side. And when that move happened after the second week, our offense just took off because we were able to move people all over the field and getting the defense in different situations just because of the way we can line people up.
And that story there kind of leads into the next question as well, because one of the things I'm always struck by when I talk to your players, particularly those juniors and seniors, is just kind of that team first mentality. It's something that seems consistent throughout your program. But how big have those guys been? Guys like Billy at the junior class, and then the seniors been, just in terms of kind of getting this team steered in the direction it's currently in.
Oh, exactly. And speaking of the senior class, we have 10 seniors on this team, and when I first came here, they were eighth graders that year, and I don't even know, they may have only won one game. It was either 0 or 1. But then there's been a few of them that have been on this varsity team since sophomore year, and they've really stepped up and brought along the young kids. And I've been some places where young kids were on the team, and it's like, I don't want to say shunning them, but they don't let them hang out. All these kids hang out together all the time, and it's, each person has a role, and all they want to do is win on Friday night. And that's all you can ask of the kids, is to play hard and treat each other with respect.
Coach, you've lost some good athletes to graduation, and you just mentioned that you're executing parts of your playbook that you've never been able to execute in recent years. You're currently on your longest winning streak, I believe, since you've been there at 5 games. That's all indicative of a solid foundation being put in place. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and one of the good things about being here, I feel like we have a good foundation with kids that have already graduated. They set that foundation when we came in that first year, that junior class that was the really good class as a seniors in 19. They kind of got everybody bought in. And then one of the neat things right now is every Friday night, Bryson Kirby, who's 4 states away, still texts us and says, "Good luck. I wish I was there." I just think that stuff like that trickles down to these young kids, and everybody bought into the program. Everybody wants to be a part of it. I just feel like that's where it has to start. And we want to get to a point where kids know what their role is year in and year out, and we're just replacing people, not having to start all over. I know in some years we've had to start over because of graduation, but now we've got more numbers playing football than we've had in any year that I've been here, from 7 through 12. And that's what you got to try to do, and try to keep those kids out and having fun.
And we talked about the big win over Littlefield last week, another big test this week with Idalou. Just talk about this matchup and some of the challenges that this team presents.
Oh yes, Idalou is real physical, especially on the defensive front. They're very, very good defensively. Offense, they can hurt you in many different ways, but they're still trying to. Their record does not dictate how good they are. They are a really good football team, trying to learn the spread offense. The same thing as what happened when we came in here, trying to get our offense rolling. But their defense is really, really good. I told our kids the other night, let's enjoy this, but you don't understand the gauntlet you're fixing to run through. I mean, yeah, we won a big game against Littlefield, but we got 4 more really good teams that we're rating to play. And so, number one is we got to stay healthy, and then number 2 is only worry about the week that we're in. But Idalou is a very good football team.
You just touched on our next question, Coach. Idalou's obviously a good football team. You're going to have Abernathy on the plate. And now all of a sudden, Lubbock Roosevelt is playing better than they were early on. They got off to a slow start, but they're playing better football now. This is a tough district you're in.
Oh yes, and I mean, Roosevelt went to the semifinals last year, and they were picked 4th this year. That tells you how big our district really is. And Abernathy and Idalou had a knockdown drag out last week. And then you don't ever discount Stanton, because that's a rivalry game for us. They do things right over there. They had a huge playoff win last year. And so from top to bottom, our district is I'd put it up against anybody's.
And just to close it out, you mentioned the Howard County Bowl. That's always a really fun rivalry game, always very competitive. Y'all took a tough loss in that one where you let a lead slip away a little bit. And then from there, if like you said, like we said, got on that roll, just how much fun has it been to see the guys kind of bounce back from that and then just continue to build confidence as y'all have gone?
Oh, you know that and right after the Howard County Bowl, we had a really, really good football team come in, and that was Sonora. Sonora's won every game except the one that we played. And looking back on it, what happened to us in the Howard County Bowl has really springboarded us into what we're doing. Our kids came back; they were ticked off because we felt like for 3.5 quarters we had that game. We made some mistakes at the end, but that's what's going to happen when you're young. But we've grown up in a hurry, and they came back ready to learn on Monday, and haven't looked back since. So I mean, sometimes you have to go through a little bit of adversity to really get going what you're trying to get going. And had we continued and won that football game against Forest End, you don't know what would happen the rest of the year, because I'm telling you, it was a different set of kids on Monday morning after the Howard County Bowl than I've seen around here in a long time.
Coach, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much for your time. We'll be keeping an eye on you, obviously, the rest of the way, and good luck against Idalou.
You bet. Thank you, guys. Thanks for covering us.
And that was Coahoma head football coach Chris Joslin. And I'll tell you, the Bulldogs, they might be the surprise. Well, yeah, you got to throw Hamlin in the mix as one of the biggest surprises. De Leon has been a big surprise, but Coahoma is right up there. I did not expect the 5-1 start, I'll confess.
No, and when I did the preview on Coahoma this year and got to talk to Coach Joslin before the season, and I know that he had some higher expectations for this team than probably outside people had for it. So it was that kind of was interesting to talk to him about that and kind of see kind of what they were thinking internally. But I think you're right that outside there weren't a whole lot that thought they'd be right there in the thick of the district once it came this time of year, because that's such a tough district. But you look now, 5-1, have a huge game against Idalou, and at this point it's kind of a deal where every game you win kind of builds momentum, keeps that rock rolling, and it really increases what you're playing for. So if they can beat Idalou this week, they're potentially playing Abernathy for a district championship at some point. So, and obviously they've got more tests than just those two. This is a really, really tough district, but it's kind of neat the position they've put themselves in, and the way they're playing right now. I've picked against them a few times, and I've got egg all over my face each time. So they have really, really played well.
Win over Idalou, if they pull this off on the road, if they pull that off, they're in the hunt for a 1 or a 2. And obviously with Abernathy and Roosevelt and Stanton still to come, which are none of those are going to be easy matchups, but they're going to be right in the fight for a high playoff seed. And I was thinking before the season, maybe a 4, and here they are battling, for the league championship. They're in it right now. Yeah. They're still in the race. So, and if they beat Idalou, it's anything is possible.
And honestly, the way they're playing is really it's a sustainable, successful model. I mean, they're playing good defense. Their offense is getting the ball all over the field. They've been able to run the ball well. They're throwing the ball well, very balanced offensively. They're doing things that good teams do. So I think at this point, you can only conclude that this is a really good Coahoma football team. It's going to be exciting to see how good they are down the stretch.
And with that, it's about time to wrap up the Big Country Preps Wednesday night podcast. But before we do that, we want to remind you, we got 3 separate subscription packages here at Big Country Preps. We got a monthly for $5 a month. We got a semi-annual 6-month subscription where we knock that price down to $4 a month. And then we got an annual 12-month subscription where we knock that price down to $3 a month, $36 for a full year of Big Country high school athletic coverage.
And we'd also like to remind you that if you see a photo you like in any one of our galleries, those are available for purchase. We have photo downloads available for $7, as well as some keepsakes and prints. As you're scrolling through the site, you'll notice pretty quickly that we take a lot of photos from these events that we're at. It's something we enjoy doing and something we are very proud of here at BigCountryPreps.com.
All Big Country, all high school, all the time. Welcome home.